carbon tax coming to an end. The energy CEOs of Canada want emergency powers. Eggs get cracking, Hudson Bay's final days, and Trump says he prefers the Liberals over the Conservatives. All that and more on The Really Big Show. I'm Jim Check with Kelowna Now. On the phone with me, our managing editor, Ian Burns out of Ottawa. Kind of a gloomier day here in the Okanagan, but still a beautiful day. How are things looking out there in Ottawa, the nation's capital?
It's unbearably hot. It's gonna be 17 degrees today. I don't know how we're gonna survive.
17 degrees.
That's
Wow.
right.
That's a shift from where it was just a short while ago.
Ottawa is or has an absolutely insane climate that I feel like a lot of people aren't aware of, where you can go from like -20 to +20 in the space of a few days. A bit like Calgary's a bit like that, isn't it, as well, in Edmonton?
Yeah. How about from going from an empty house to people going back to work? Where's that at? 72 days now since the Parliament's been prorogued.
Yep, and that's like they must have been having the time of their lives. The backbenchers, the sort of the MPs that don't really do anything ever. Well, that isn't fair. I'm sorry, backbenchers. But the MPs who are sort of, they just sort of get on with it really. They're not ministers or shadow ministers or anything like that. They've just had the longest holiday of all time, really, because they were already off for a few weeks.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're just living the high life on the taxpayers' dime.
They never seem to get to the microphone either, so they don't have a lot to do other than sit there and clap every now and then or shout. Shout and clap, either or, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's certainly. I think that's certainly true of the Conservatives. I mean, the Conservative Party is just a complete one-man band. It's just a Pierre
Right.
Poilievre show. They very rarely wheel anybody else out, and when they do, it's one of basically two people,
Do they
other
do
than
they ha-
Poilievre. So I mean, it's pretty easy life if you can get it in the Tory Party.
do they have signs up there? Shout, clap, boo, hiss,
Gia.
cheer.
In in the British Parliament, it's even funnier because they can't clap in the British Parliament. It's considered unparliamentary, so you're not allowed to clap. So what they do instead is they sort of go like "Yeah," like that. That's actually the sound. It's like cows. It's well worth watching the British Parliament just to hear the cows.
There you go. Well, the consumer carbon tax is coming to an end, and it looks like most people are going to see 17 to 18 cents relief at the pumps, which would be great for many people. And this is a compounding carbon tax, right, that gets added on everywhere you go. So we should see a dip in inflation as well as this thing comes into play. But not everybody happy with the carbon tax coming to an end.
Yeah, there's a few people that have grumbled. David Eby has done that, hasn't he? Just about in his own special little way. He's kind of said, "Well, it did work, but the Conservatives complained." Gilboa's another one, isn't he? Who seems to lament its passing. But it's worth 2 points worth making on this. One is, yeah, it's like 18 cents, but it was going to increase by 3 cents, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
about three
Was.
cents, I
Yeah.
think, on April Fool's Day,
Yeah.
appropriately. So really, it's more like 21 cents, isn't it? So that's like, that's close on $10 or
Yeah.
actually probably more than that, like close to $20 for some people, depending on the size of your fuel tank. So that's a pretty massive saving for people.
And
Can't be underestimated that. But the other thing that I find interesting is Desjardins here, one of the sort of the big boys in the Canadian finance world, I guess. Like they've come out and said, yeah, this will be great. This will be a huge saving. But it's kind of like, where were these voices back when it was still an argument, The carbon tax argument was won probably, what, 5 months ago, maybe, I would say? About 5 months ago, in my recollection. But this battle was still being fought for real, like a year ago, 2 years ago. And these big institutions they didn't really commit, did they? But now that it's dead and everybody agrees that it sucks, they're like, yeah, this is great. Great news, everyone.
well, even the Liberals have come out and basically saying that it was a terrible policy. You know what I mean? They're championing it, and oddly, Pierre Poilievre kind of silent on it, like because it's really a big victory for him. His whole platform was axe the tax, and he's got his. I mean, that's one of the messages, and it's been accomplished. Yet the Liberals are the ones taking the victory lap on it, and he's kind of like it's silent on it.
Yeah, I feel like he should go to the printing studio and obtain a D and put it on in front of axe So now you can say axe the tax and get a little, maybe
Uh,
like a little green check, just to be like, yeah, he should say, look, we were an opposition, an opposition party. We didn't actually have any real power, but look what we've achieved. We've axed the tax, even though we're not in power. It also succeeded in terms of, he could argue, putting the spotlight on the Arctic. He could
yeah,
also argue that he succeeded with GST on new homes because it looks like Carney is on
yeah.
board with that as well. Like he can claim a lot of victories,
And
and in truth, for all that he's now kind of in the dumps a little bit because it looks the polls seem to think the Liberals are going to win. I would say his period in opposition, which has been about 2 years, has been extremely successful, really, hasn't it? When you look at it, he's succeeded on his main points and he also got rid of the prime minister, which was basically his job. So
and
he's got a lot to be sort of proud of, I would say.
And the one that you're leaving out there, the capital gains tax, which has really been hurtful to many people, and even encouraged some professionals to leave Canada. So getting rid of the capital gains tax is another big one for him. And when Chrystia Freeland was running, she was basically mimicking his whole campaign platform.
Yeah. No, that's another one. I mean, to be honest, if we sat here and really thought about it, we would find more. Like I'd say the removal of Mark Miller, probably like immigration minister, that's probably his doing, as well as Gilbo from the environment file. That was, these were like the they suffered a lot under Polyev's attacks, didn't they? And now they're gone. And I think I find it hard to believe that they're not connected. That those count as kind of scalps for him.
It's odd that these, like you say, these financial institutions and that are now kind of on the other side of it. And when it was still a very popular thing for the Liberals, they definitely defended it. So interesting for
Well,
sure.
can you remember the conversations? Even though the Bank of Canada governor himself, who's like basically in handcuffs, he's in like a supermax prison when it comes to saying anything about politics. He's supposed to be extremely careful and restricted. Even he, in the height of the carbon tax debate, came out and said, yes, it adds to inflation. But can you remember the debate about that, where it's like, no, not really, no, it doesn't, not really. It's
Yeah.
kind of we were in a sort of alternate universe, it seemed, for like at least a year where there were people that were pretending that it didn't add to inflation or that it didn't, like, as you often say, that it didn't compound and affect other areas of life other than just the when you buy gas. And I just think, yeah, we were in a sort of surreal parallel reality for a while there. And there were even academics that came out. I don't know if you can remember that. Like dozens of academics came out and they're like, no, no, this doesn't add to that was about food, wasn't it? So this doesn't add to food costs.
And here's
All
the
just nonsense.
And here's the big one that we haven't talked about yet, and then we'll leave it there. Is the big one is that it's 21 cents a liter on diesel, and we live in the second largest landmass in the world. And guess what you need to transport goods across Canada? Semi
Yeah.
trucks that burn diesel. And guess what you need to other transport other goods across Canada? Locomotives that burn diesel. And then in the fields are tractors that burn diesel. Heavy mining equipment burns diesel. Like diesel is the fuel of industry. Like there's no doubt about it. Like just think of that. Diesel is the fuel of industry, and it had a 21-cent carbon tax on it. And again, compounding as you move stuff around. Think about that. The second largest landmass, and they said that it doesn't add to inflation. Just use your common sense for a second. Diesel is the fuel for industry. I'm not sure why Polyev didn't pick up on that one too in the past. Diesel is the fuel for industry, and it was taxed even more than consumer gasoline at the pump.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, especially when you think about the importance of, as you say, railway, the railway system. You know, how much of what people use in their everyday life lands in Vancouver, which is pretty much the best port that Canada has, year-round port that faces the Pacific. How much stuff lands there and then goes on a train or in a truck and comes, and then you have it, and you get it off Amazon or whatever. You don't really think about it, but that's courtesy of diesel,
Yeah.
as well as lots of other things. But yeah, it's just one of those things. Polyev today was in Sudbury, and he did a little speech that I watched, and he was talking about like the workers in the room, and he was saying thank you to them, and he said a lot of people don't even realize that the bridge that they drove to work in or on top of and all the rest of it. He's talking about all the infrastructure. He's saying they don't even realize that that's actually built and maintained by people like you. And I think that is a very strong point, and it's a very valid point that as Canadian society has become increasingly urbanized over the last sort of century or more, people have just become detached from that reality. And that's the only reason, really, why a tax like this was possible in the first place, is because people in urban, um, who have urban lifestyles and living in an urban environment, they don't, they've never had to think about diesel or what that means to their life. That's like a completely abstract concept to them.
All these politicians, NDP and Liberals, talking about how we need to increase interprovincial trade and all that stuff. At the same time, they want a carbon tax on the industry. And again, diesel is the fuel behind industry. Diesel is the energy of industry. And there's no doubt about it. There's absolutely, and there's no alternatives. Because I don't know, Tesla's not selling semi-trucks here yet that are electric. Like, there is no alternative to locomotives yet that burn diesel, right? Like, watch those trains that, like when if you're in Alberta and Saskatchewan, even in BC, as they're coming through, that, like they seem to be miles and miles long. They're being pulled or powered by diesel.
Yeah. No, it's all important, really, isn't it? And yeah, you already said it, but we can't say it enough times. Like, Canada is absolutely gigantic. Even if most people only live along the southern strip, it's still, in that sense, it's like a lot of people say it's a bit like Chile, the South American country, and that it's like there's a huge distance to get across still. And the sort of important fact as well being that you can live somewhere like Winnipeg or somewhere like that and be so far away from a port that you have to get your stuff by truck or train. There's no alternative.
And
So
one more.
it's that sense of being like trapped, isn't it? And you have to have you have to use these tools, and you have to use fuels like diesel. There's
Yeah.
really is no alternative.
So again, you used to talk about the ships that come into ports. Guess what they burn?
Yeah. Indeed, quite a lot of it.
Yeah, diesel.
I mean,
And
even aircraft fuel as well is that's often targeted, isn't it, by environmentalists, and yet that's another sort of
not the
essential fuel
ones
that we don't really have an alternative for.
not the ones flying to COP 25, 26 or whatever, not those ones, but yeah, that's all good, well and good. Anyway, BC is going to see another hole in their budget. The end of the consumer carbon tax leaves a $1.5 billion hole in the BC budget.
Yeah, well, I mean, presumably Mr. Eby has considered this possibility because he committed to abolishing the carbon tax last year, didn't he? He
Yep.
said if the federal government gets rid of it, we'll get rid of it. I mean, he must have predicted at that point that it was on its last legs and that it was on the way out. So we must assume that he's got a plan, whether that's some kind of retrenchment in the budget so he can cut that and not need to raise extra taxes or what, I don't know.
Well, EB has said that the carbon tax was an important tool for the province for more than 15 years, and cost of living pressures and pending removal of the federal carbon tax for consumers showed there's no longer support for the levy tax. But he did say he would ensure big polluters continue to pay. Who are the big polluters? Is it the diesel trucks? Is it like the transport trucks? Is it like, who are these people other than industry? Like, so that'll be interesting because again, a lot of the costs, like even when if you run a business and you get stuff shipped to you, there's going to be a shipping cost on it, and also most invoices showed a carbon tax in addition to the shipping cost.
Yeah, and it would be a shame, wouldn't it, if he's greenlit all of these projects, hasn't he? Or he said that he's going to focus on that and LNG and minerals and things like that. It would be a great shame if he then just shifted the entire carbon tax burden onto them, like even at a even higher rate, because
Yeah.
then they would struggle to be profitable in a very competitive market, wouldn't they? And they would just be overwhelmed by American competition and also Australian to a lesser extent, I think.
Werner Atwiller, associate professor at the Sauder School of Business at the University of BC, says that the elephant in the room, though, is LNG, an expansion of LNG, and that BC has been underestimating the industry's leakage of methane, a potent natural gas. So again, doesn't sound very friendly to LNG.
Yeah, and I mean, it just seems a bit ridiculous to me to focus on that when when you could talk about actual like real filthy pollution from the likes of lignite burned in places like India and China. I mean, you don't have to go to China or India. Just look at pictures of their cities. Like they're so polluted that it's like if they had a huge supply of natural gas, which we could theoretically help in providing to them, then they wouldn't have to deal with that level of pollution, which isn't abstract. Pollution and emissions, that's not an abstract concept in places like India because the actual cities themselves have like smog hanging over them. So, it just seems to me a little bit short-sighted that to focus on the problems associated with natural gas rather than the benefits.
I think that the NDP have put themselves in a really bad box. They look like a sad bunch most of the time right now because they couldn't deliver on that $1,000 rebate they promised British Columbians, and then they're just kind of getting they're digging their own hole. It seems like most of the time, and just in their policies that are kind of anti prosperity for Canada.
Well, yeah, and it is an odd one because they're supposed to be the Workers' Party. I know that's kind of like a loose connection nowadays, particularly in provincial BC politics. But you would think that they would want to create as many high-paying jobs for blue collar workers as possible, wouldn't you? But
Yeah.
they do seem to kind of they seem to restrict that. Certainly, when it comes to creating an environment where people feel confident investing in natural resources.
Well, they put something in front of everything in their carbon tax scheme that is really conflicts with the prosperity of Canada.
Yeah, well, it's especially as well when you look at the fiscal nightmare that British Columbia is in, the desperate need that the province has to raise extra revenue to try and pay off its debt and balance the budget. You would really think, wouldn't you, that they'd be keen to go all in on all kinds of things. But that's politics for you, isn't it? They realize that their own survival depends upon blowing the climate change trumpet. They know that that's their jobs, their position in as MLAs depends on that. So if it comes down to it, they're going to pick that.
Yeah, a group of CEOs call on Ottawa to declare an energy crisis in Canada, though, so they can fast track projects. The chief executive of the largest oil and gas pipeline companies in Canada said they want to see a simplified regulatory regime, repeal of the federal carbon tax on industrial production, elimination of Ottawa's emissions cap. And those are the two things still standing in the way, even if they remove the carbon tax. And that's what, again, another Pierre Poilievre point, and it'll be interesting to see if they adopt that as well, but it doesn't look good right now.
No, but it's very interesting because obviously this is what the Trump administration has done, and
Yeah.
and they're using this energy emergency concept, let's call it, to get ahead of the game. And it does make sense. It makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Because that would help to cut through a lot of the obstacles. And clearly, the Premier of British Columbia, David Eby, he at least agrees in principle, doesn't he? Because he has done something quite similar in terms of the latest bill that he's trying to put through, which is effectively a series of emergency powers to deal with the Trump tariffs. So, I mean, clearly there's a sympathy for that kind of idea among the political class in Canada.
And eggs get cracking. Eggs at a really high price in the U.S. So they've started to come down though. Eggs have started to fall in the U.S. and it all has to do with the bird flu virus. But the U.S. officials are cracking down on people trying to bring valuable eggs across the border. So they got 116% on egg interceptions this year, while fentanyl seizures are down. So they're focusing on eggs. You never would have thought that eggs would be the thing that people would be looking to smuggle across the border.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of being used, this, isn't it? As a way to beat Trump, I think, like a way to like make him look foolish and to associate him with price increases. But it's actually due to the bird flu, isn't it? And it
Yeah.
predates his presidency. But it's just one of those things. It's like you could call it a meme, I guess. It's basically become a meme, and it's become an attack line, and I actually think it's quite an effective one because obviously everybody loves eggs, don't they? So
I'm a big fan of
quite a
the egg.
smart one.
I'm a big fan of
Yeah.
the egg. I eat about like 4 to 6 eggs a day. I've had four already today. Big fan of the egg. I've lost 55 pounds, about 55, 60 pounds about 6, 7 years ago now and kept it off. And eggs is one of my main deals. And I've gained muscle at an age of a spry 62. So there you go. Eggs, the secret weapon. Lots of protein, very good for you, in my opinion. I know they try to tell you that they're not good for you, but better eggs than a glass of sugar from your local coffee shop.
The only thing that I ever hear people talk about is the negative thing is the cholesterol. But I mean, I think you've got to really hammer the eggs to get a lot of cholesterol or too much cholesterol.
Let's just say I just had a checkup and I hammer the eggs all the time for the last 6 years. And there's good cholesterol, good cholesterol and bad cholesterol. And
Yeah.
eggs are so full of God's goodness. How's that? So let's get
And they're just
cracking.
so tasty as well, and they absorb other flavors. That's their greatest gift, is that
And
they absorb other flavors, don't they?
here's a tip for people out there that are trying to manage their health more. Is I make egg pizza, and you can use the eggs, like it's almost like a scrambled egg, and you make that your base, and then cover it just like you were going to cover a pizza. And it's actually, and you put it and finish it in the oven there, and it's. If anybody wants that recipe, I'm more than glad to share with you. It is an amazing treat to have. Like no, no wheat, no sugar is how I lost all the weight. No wheat, no sugar,
You'll have to
and
be
no corn.
careful, or the Italian embassy is going to start sending you cease and desist orders.
Yeah, there you go. Let's get cracking. I love the egg. Anyway, and guess what's coming up around the corner? Easter. You can hide them for the kids and get them to love the eggs at the same time, right?
Good idea, yeah.
Have you ever blown out the egg, with a pin and you make two small holes in both ends? I think that's a Ukrainian kind of thing, like for decorating the eggs, where you actually puncture them and they last forever. Then you just little tiny holes, and then you actually have to blow it out, and you have these hollow eggs.
I've never seen that, no, but I've seen some beautifully painted eggs in my
Yeah.
time. And they get bigger eggs, don't they? Like ostrich eggs or something to really
Yeah.
create a masterpiece.
Yeah, get the real eggs instead of the chocolate eggs. You and your family will thank you later. Maybe not right away because they taste good, but hey, who doesn't? Nobody needs all that sugar. Canada's population grew at the slowest pace since the pandemic in the fourth quarter. And we talked about this in a couple shows ago, where we talked about countries like Hungary and Denmark and that really encourage population by incentives for people having kids. I think we need to have more of that here in Canada. We need better incentives for people to have kids, and so because people are having to choose between two people working and not having kids, right?
Yeah, well, I think we talked about that Financial Times article, didn't we? I mean, there was nothing particularly new in that article, but I think it brought to a wider audience the problems that Canada's experienced in recent years, where we've gone absolutely all in on mass immigration, really like just about as extreme as it's possible to go.
Yeah.
And the result has been no increase in wealth per person. So GDP per capita has actually declined. Productivity just shows no sign of increasing. And I mean, lots of studies out of England have suggested that there is actually a connection between mass immigration and low productivity. And that's kind of obvious why that would be the case, isn't it? Because if you can get cheap immigrants to come in, you're not going to invest in productivity
Yeah.
increasing technology or anything like that, are you? You're
I
just going to use cheap workers.
I would actually advise people to go listen to the recent speech from JD Vance, which talks about that exact point that corporations in many of the Western worlds were kind of like that was their drug, cheap labor. So they went after this cheap labor at the expense of innovation because they didn't have to innovate because they just used cheap labor instead of innovation. And that is the thing that actually slowed down innovation. Um, and then encouraging your own population, see, spending some of that money to people that have been paying taxes for a long time, encouraging them to have children may be better because there's a lot more nationalism that way too. People care about their country more so, right?
Yeah. But I mean, I think it's undoubtedly been um, a failure, hasn't it? The Justin Trudeau's immigration policy, as he said himself. I always have to say that he said it himself
Yeah.
in pretty strong, sort of stark language as well, where he said like immigrants are coming in and they're undercutting native workers. Like traditionally the language of the sort of nativist right, but he came out and used that language. I think that was last year, maybe even 18 months ago. He came out and said that. But I mean, when you look at the data, it's just it's disastrous, and that's abstract. You have to remember the abstract stuff is bad. So the charts and the graphs, that's all really bad. But then there's also the kind of the human element, which like the more kind of personal, subjective view, which is life being a little bit harder, like places being more crowded, more traffic, harder to get a doctor and buy a house and all things like that. Like, and then obviously what you mentioned, how that all kind of contributes to making it a bit harder for young people to start families. It's all there. I mean, it's just been a failure. It's been a disaster, and I think I can understand why they did it. Because it particularly surged after COVID when there was a lot of pressure to bring in workers, wasn't there? Because a lot of big companies were complaining about labor shortages, and they thought, all right, we'll give the economy a boost, and we'll also satisfy all of these CEOs and everything that want all these workers. But obviously, now that we look at it, now that we're through the other side, it wasn't a good idea, was it? It was a massive failure.
And the number two on the bridge of Canada there, Chrystia Freeland herself said in an interview that Canada wasted the last 10 years prioritizing identity politics and virtue signaling instead of building our economy. That's from number
Well,
two.
and even Carney himself said that there's been a little not enough concentration and not enough focus on the economy, which is an odd thing for him to say because he was the chief economic advisor. So
Yeah.
I guess that's him saying that his voice wasn't heard when he was the advisor.
I don't know if we'll get Justin Trudeau as a fan of the show, but he was at Canadian Tire the other day showing off maybe he's looking for an influencer job, but he had some, in his cart, he had some kitchen supplies. He'll have to buy his own kitchen supplies and food now. And he said it himself too, that he doesn't worry about the economy. And, 10 years later, that really shows.
The budget will balance itself. I mean, I cannot believe he said that. That's got to be one of the gaffes of the century, hasn't it?
It's got to be for sure. And then Pierre Poilievre has a video. We're not going to show this video because it's more of an ad for him, but we've talked about this endlessly on this show, how Canada is one of the richest and most diverse resource nations in the world, and it's been suppressed over the past 10 years. And Poilievre here is saying that build Canada first, starting with the Ring of Fire. Canada is so rich in mines, minerals, forestry, oil and gas, LNG. Like, we are the richest nation in the world, and we've been running it like we're the poorest nation in the world because we put something else in front of everything that conflicts with our natural wealth.
Yeah, well, I mean, God, it's such a this is the topic of the last sort of 50 years at least, isn't it, in Canada? This is like the number one issue, the number one topic is like why has this country failed to just basically it's almost the equivalent of like picking up gold bars off the floor and just be like, okay, I'll take this money then. Why has the various Canadian governments, provincial and federal, why have they failed to exploit these resources? I mean, many answers to that question, I think, but it's really coming to bite us on the rear end now, isn't it? Now that we've lost our great sponsor in the
Yeah,
south.
if I was running in the Conservative Party, like Joe in our comments, like we try to involve our viewers in here, said that Freeland said immigration was our solution to the housing crisis. I mean, you can just play these sound bites over and over again of the things they said. Karina Gold is a really famous one. We've said this one many, many times, where she did in a tweet, she says, we need to figure out a way to landlock Alberta's oil and gas. And again, the largest contributor to Canada's GDP, even though it's suppressed, is Alberta's oil and gas.
Yeah. A lot of a lot of unwise comments, and also worse than the unwise comments is the unwise actions, I would say. And
Yeah.
yeah, here we
And,
are,
and
sort of
then
panicking now.
where was the media saying, hey, that doesn't sound logical.
Well, or not just the media, but the institutions. We talked about it earlier with the carbon tax. Why is it that they were just all ducks in a row, weren't they? They all just
Yeah.
sang from the same hymn sheet. Or if they didn't do that, they just didn't say anything. They were just quiet. Why is that? Where was the where was the courage to tell the truth against a government narrative, where's that been?
Yeah. And I've said this saying a few times: fear is where cowards go to die. Anyway, Carney says Canada should not rely on others to defend our nation during Arctic visit. He's got a lot to fix there if he thinks that we're going to defend our Arctic on our own. A lot to fix there.
Well, again, like obviously not everybody's as sad as I am and won't sit through and watch these speeches and press conferences, but that is a one to watch because he spends all this time making all these big boy remarks about sovereignty and it's like we're masters of our own house and all this kind of thing. And then as soon as he goes to the Q&A, like the second question or something is, why don't you spend money on the military then? And he just sort of mumbles something. He says, "Yeah, yeah, we should spend money, probably sooner than we expect, but it has to be value for money," and then kind of just moves on to the next question. It's kind of like, so you've just asserted sovereignty, including over the Northwest Passage, by the way, which is obviously a long-standing dispute between particularly the US and Canada. They say that it's international water. Canada says it's actually all Canada's. But how can you make these? How can you sort of punch your chest like this and look like the big boy, and then not make any promises to back it up? You need a military to claim sovereignty. You
And
can't just draw a line on a map and say that's mine. You need to back it up with actual real things.
and you know how long it takes to build a military? Canada was asked to buy F-35s back in 2015. I think Harper was moving towards that, and Justin Trudeau said he would never buy the F-35s because right now we have a fleet of F-16s or F-18s. They're 40 years old regardless, and they're old technology. And then in 2023, he said he was going to buy the F-35s. And now it sounds like they're thinking about maybe canceling that order and looking for something else. You know how long it takes to put these orders in and get stuff delivered? Like
Yeah.
there's no slated delivery. Like I mean, I think it's in 2 years we started getting some F-35s. Protecting our north, Canadians should understand this. NORAD protects our north, and we've got like some old fighter jets up there, 40-year-old fighter jets. But the United States has up there nuclear icebreakers, nuclear warships, nuclear subs, F-22 Raptors, and F-35s, and plus their whole early warning system and their Space Force and all that stuff. Like we rely heavily on the Americans for Carney to say all this stuff up there and say that we're going to take over our own sovereignty. Like you got to spend money, and it takes time. Like our military is comprised of our next story. Like they didn't even spend the cash they had. Military reserves are now 25% short of their targeted minimum strength. Records show the Department of National Defense in an in-house report said reserves are so poorly managed they did not even spend more than $1 billion approved by Parliament to get them up to strength. It's you can show the next slide there. So we don't take our military serious. The last 10 years has been abysmal for the military. And then we just recently lowered the standards. So people with, that they wouldn't typically let in are now being allowed in, but they just don't spend the money, and they don't have the equipment that matches anything in the world, like what the Chinese have, the Russians have, and especially what the Americans have.
Yeah. And in that context, it is astonishing, isn't it, that Mark Carney is not shouting as loud as he can about massively increasing the spending and the sort of sophistication and the quality of the military. And it seems to me like a bit of an open net, really, for Pierre Poilievre, but even he isn't really saying anything. You think Pierre Poilievre would come out and say, look, 3.5% of GDP or something like that, like a big, healthy sort of chunk of GDP on the military, and then he would really position himself as being the stronger party on that. But I guess the reason that neither of them is doing that is because maybe there isn't that much public support for it. But I don't know. I mean, there's an article you point out this about the 25% short, the Blacklock story there. There's also a story on CBC related to the Air Force, which we were discussing earlier, which suggests that 60% of the Air Force's inventory is unserviceable
Yeah.
in their words.
We've
So in other
talked about
words,
that too. It's like,
can't be used. I mean, so they don't have enough anyway, and even if what they do have, most of it can't be used.
why don't they at least be honest? Like the Royal Canadian Air Force, like you're just saying, it's 40-year-old technology, 40-year-old jets, 40-year-old jets, and a lot of it doesn't even work. And then our submarines,
60% apparently,
yeah,
60% doesn't even work. What the hell?
and our submarines are 4 conventional diesel, again, diesel submarines that we bought in a UK garage sale that lit on fire, literally lit on fire as we were driving them back or whatever, sailing them back from Britain. And then we asked for our money back and they said, good one.
Yeah, good old British friends. We also ask them for a bit of help during this, horrible situation with the Americans, and they kind of say nothing.
And then a little more, Mark Carney here, he says he will recuse himself if there's any potential conflicts of interest. Again, still very much not, this is another Black Luck story, it said he will recuse himself from any dealings with Brookfield Asset Management, the New York-based conglomerate that paid him the equivalent of $9.8 million in stock options last December. Yeah, these slowly a little bit of this information is coming. Opposition said that Carney's conflict was so glaring he should immediately dump all stock holdings, because Brookfield Asset Management heavy into the carbon credits and all that stuff too, and which is what he talks about a lot. And then Carney said he would meet with ethics advisors and ensure that he does not breach any Conflict of Interest Act. I mean, we've seen Justin Trudeau meet with the ethics commissioner. I think the ethics commissioner needs to get an ethics commissioner. And then, yeah. And then this is from one of the Conservative MPs, Barrett. Are we simply to be satisfied as Canadians that someone that can be Prime Minister of this country and only be in public office holder who does not have public disclosure? Not only is Mr. Carney the Prime Minister, he's currently the least transparent public office holder in Canada.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't going away, is it? And every press conference that he's been at in the recent days, this has been asked, and he's becoming increasingly unhappy about those questions as well, isn't he? And quite aggressive in his dismissal. But I feel like it isn't going to go away. And obviously, you can say, and it would be accurate, I think, that the Conservatives are being a little bit opportunistic here. But it is also quite obviously in the public interest, isn't it? We ought to know if the leader of our country stands to benefit personally from decisions that he makes, especially controversial ones related to things like you mentioned, like green technology and net zero and things like that. These are very, very controversial policies that have been pushed through against considerable opposition. And
Especially
if he's going to make money from that, then yeah,
especially
we must
since
know this.
The last 10 years, we've had our natural wealth suppressed, and then we have another person coming in to take the helm with the same crew, basically the same crew, and then his company, and he's been one of the global leaders on climate change, and then he still has shares in a company that can benefit from them. And he's going to make decisions based on that. I think that needs to be definitely exposed.
Absolutely. No, it's black and white as far as I'm concerned, at least from we're talking about ethics here.
Yeah.
Rather than legal questions. We're talking about sort of morality, aren't we? From a moral or ethical perspective, I think it's cut and dry. We need to know that our leaders, that the people in charge of policy and law and all the rest of it in this country, we need to know that they're not personally benefiting from things that they push through. Or at least if they are, we need to know that that's happening so that we can ask questions about it and so that we can make judgments based on that.
Donald Trump with an interview last night with Fox. We're just going to play a small clip here that you can go find it on Fox and you can watch the whole thing. He basically said he'd rather deal with a liberal leader than he didn't like. But let's play this clip here.
Isn't that going to make them more hostile to us and possibly
I'd rather deal with a liberal than a
for China closer to Canada, and that would really put us in a bind.
The conservative that's running is stupidly no friend of mine. I don't know him, but he said negative things. So When he says negative things, I couldn't care less. I think it's easier to deal, actually, with a liberal.
He went on to say quite a few more things there too. Again, you can go watch that. Definitely, maybe he likes Mark Carney better because Mark Carney really is driven by money, and Donald Trump understands money. So maybe that's part of the reason.
I mean, he could also be playing a game and trying to distance himself from Polyev because he realizes that it's toxic for Polyev to be associated with Trump. But I don't know, that seemed to be quite spontaneous, really, didn't it?
Yeah.
He does. We know that he carries these grudges, and he did seem to be a little bit offended. What does he expect, though? What does he expect when he's called into question Canada's sovereignty? What do you think the traditionally patriotic party, the Conservative Party, like the traditionally sort of like monarchist party, what do you think they're going to say? Obviously, they're going to be very upset about that. But for him, it's all about personal dealings, isn't it? It's not, none of it's about principle. But I mean, it's a very interesting little section anyway. And we did a story on our website, and I've embedded, because Fox News kind of like clipped the entire section on Canada, and I've embedded that on our story, and it is really worth having a look at, because this woman, Laura Ingraham, obviously she works for Fox News, and Fox News is very pro-Trump and pro-Republican Party, and yet it's very interesting, she was refusing to accept his BS on the subsidy. Like, he keeps saying that,
He pushed hard for
keeps saying that
Canada.
the US subsidizes. Yeah, he was like, it's more than 200 billion, and she was just like, no, it's not. Like, she's just refused to accept it. It's quite good.
I think Canadians should send her a thank you note. She did push hard for Canada. Definitely pushed hard.
Yeah, she also actually made a really strong point, which is like, why does it seem like you're pushing Canada harder than you are our enemies? Like, why are you doing that? Which is, I think that is like that's the question that I would want to ask Trump.
Yeah.
Why are you doing this?
He did reference Trudeau in there as part of the reason. You know, he did say it, and I think that myself, that he was definitely irked by Trudeau. But Trudeau's gone now, right? But I do, you know, like you made a point there. The Conservatives are the party of nationalism and of Canada, and whereas like even Justin Trudeau said that Canada is a post-national state, and even Mark Carney has identified himself as a European when asked what he identifies as. So.
Yeah, well, that's traditionally what the Conservative Party is. It's like, it's supposed to stand with the monarch and with the, in the old days, the British Empire, and close relations with the sort of the mother country as it was then. That's what the Tories are supposed to be. They're supposed to be, that's supposed to be their perspective. Whereas the Liberals are supposed to be a bit more Whiggish, like they're supposed to be more open to international relations and things like that. But yeah, it is a funny one. I mean, Polyev, he probably didn't want to antagonize Trump. I think it's fair to say that, because he didn't really spend much time trying to antagonize Donald Trump before Trump decided to attack Canada. So he's been put in a difficult situation. But I mean, when the leader of the US starts saying that he wants to absorb your country, it doesn't matter who you are, what political party you're in, really. You should be very upset about that, and you've got to say something, haven't you?
One of Canadians' icons actually was part of Canada before Canada, Hudson Bay's since 1670. And we got a clip here. We talked to some of the people in front of the Kelowna Hudson Bay.
Hanging by a thread, its fate virtually sealed, people are stopping in to look for deals with a sense of sadness.
It's quite sad that that this is happening. The original Bay got its charter in 1670, and now it's defunct. It's over.
It's pretty sad. We've been shopping there ever since my youth. In the 1980s, it was a great place to go to. All of a sudden, it's going to be gone.
All my life, it's been where I've always gone.
You can go on KelownaNow.com and watch that full video. Lots of people reacting to the loss of Hudson Bay, great retailer, storied actually, retailer. Weird thing though, I was in the Calgary Hudson Bay, just looking around, because it had a couple of floors. The elevators and the escalators out of service, and then the Canadian Press story that's on KelownaNow.com too says that all the elevators and escalators have been deactivated, and some of them are 6 flights of upstairs just to get the menswear section. Not sure why they're. That's a curious one.
Got to work for that deal. They were reluctant to just give it away. You got to earn it.
Yes. Maybe they're cutting back on their power bill or something.
Well, if that is, if they have done that intentionally, it's sort of like a premeditated thing, then I'm sure they're going to get some kind of lawsuit.
Well, they did.
From
Obviously,
a disability group or something.
If all the stores across, like in Western Canada, have shut the elevators and escalators down at the same time, it can't be anything but planned, right?
Yeah, well, I was actually there. I don't think it was last weekend, but the weekend before that, and that was in Ottawa, and the escalators were working there. So I don't know, but I have seen this story elsewhere. So it's definitely not just
I was
it's
actually
not just you that's seen that.
Yeah, I was in the Calgary store, and the Canadian Press said that they're shut down in all 16 BC flagship stores. So there you go. And this is a little bit of Kelowna news. This is we play a little clip here as we can just talk about it as we play this clip here. The former Hells Angels clubhouse in Kelowna is being torn down. The city bought that just like 3 months ago, right? So that's it was on Ellis Street and Renoke Avenue, between the city's downtown core and Knox Mountain there. I think a lot of people. One of our reporters that was in First Story that he covered there, he's a young man that went out there to cover that story a long time ago. And he was standing on the other side of the road, and he was feeling quite nervous because the cops were staring at him, right? So
I can remember walking past that. It is in a really good spot, isn't it? Right next to Knox there, and quite close to the water as well. But I remember walking past that, and somebody I was with was like, "Oh yeah, that's the Hells Angels house." I was like, "What? Why is it so? Why does everybody know? Why is that okay?"
And then the NDP, we put this, well, I'm going to show you the chart in a bit here, but the NDP is starting to run ads, and they're realizing that their real competition in this election that's upcoming is the Liberals, because they're the one losing ground. And here's another attack ad from the NDP.
Liberal leader Mark Carney has quite the resume, but let's take a closer look. He was vice chair at Brookfield when they evicted tenants and raised rents to boost corporate landlord profits. And he was caught lying about Brookfield's environmental record to make more money for investors. For Carney, making the rich richer is just another day at the office. That's a big red flag. Mark Carney, in it for billionaires, not for working people.
And if we show you this chart, I'll show you why the NDP is attacking the Liberals as opposed to the Conservatives, which they typically attack. There you go. Liberals gaining ground and the NDP going into nuclear winter.
Yeah, well, they're going to have to do a bit more than that, a bit more than the odd Twitter video. They're going to have to really come out with some ideas, some policies, and
I think they have
to get people's attention.
I think they have a leadership issue, just as the Liberals had with Justin Trudeau. I mean, the Jagmeet Singh definitely has run out of ideas, and all he does is say ridiculous things. And maybe he should go down there and campaign with AOC. I think he's very similar to just saying things that just make no sense at all, and not sure how they benefit Canada. And I think some of the NDP.
Also...
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think I said this yesterday, that I don't think he's particularly talented as a politician, but I think he's just bad at getting attention. And I know that sounds funny to say because we do hear about him quite a lot, but that's really just because he was propping up the Liberals. That was just another way to kind of to talk about the Liberals in a way, wasn't it? Because it was like that was the question that he was being asked: Are you going to support this? Are you going to support this? But in terms of like getting attention for his policy ideas, I mean, I think if you asked the average sort of Canadian voter, like name 3 NDP policies under Jagmeet Singh, under his leadership, I think people would really struggle to think of anything. And I can remember the first time I've ever seen this happen in my journalistic career. I saw he had a press conference and he delivered his spiel, and then he stood behind the podium and he's like, okay, I'm now ready to receive questions, and literally nobody asked a question. There were no journalists there, and no journalists called in, and there were no questions. And that kind of tells you, if that happens to you as the leader of a political party, you're doing something wrong. People aren't interested in you. That's
I was just, before you said all that, I was going to say he's become irrelevant, and that's the truth of the matter. Because how he had power was because he propped up Justin Trudeau, but at this point, they don't seem to need him. and he doesn't really have any policy statements that are good for Canada, and he just says ludicrous things, so he's really become irrelevant.
Yeah, I mean, to play devil's advocate for a second, he would say, and his supporters would say, look, we got quite a lot. We got that dental plan, and we got the pharmacare thing. You know, that was all because of that deal. So we actually did get some tangible results. I mean, they're controversial programs, obviously, for various reasons that we probably don't have time to go into. But something that we always used to say, I can remember we had this conversation a lot of times, didn't we? And also with people like Mario Canseco, who you've interviewed a lot of times, the pollster. The question was, why have they not suffered? Because usually a party, usually the junior partner in any kind of coalition or deal, usually they suffer a lot, and a lot more than the major partner. And it didn't look like they'd suffered. You know, they were sort of trudging along on the same sort of you know, between 15 and 20 points. But now it looks like they have suffered, and it looks like it, as is the case with everything else in Canadian politics right now, is that it's to do with Trudeau's departure, isn't it? And obviously Trump as well. And now they finally, because of that, they've finally suffered like a 50% hit to their popularity.
I think there's a lot of anger in Canada for Justin Trudeau and Jagmeet Singh, because they were seen as I guess to them they were the dynamic duo, and you know, like to a lot of Canadians it was the devastating duo. So
the gruesome twosome to some people.
Yeah, so however you look at it. And they said a lot of stuff that was nonsensical. Well, let's move to markets, though. Gold. Gold is hanging on to that $3,000 mark in United States dollars. And in Canadian dollars, what is that, like 50,000? Surely we jest, like 43, 44 in Canadian dollars. Quite a big difference, though, eh? Like if you think about that, that's a huge difference, right?
Yeah, massive.
And the Bank of America, Citigroup, and Macquarie Group, all vocal cheerleaders of gold during the breakneck rally. They say it's going to stick around in that high price, right? They said anxiety in the global economy are reasons to stay bullish, right? So there you go. Like the tariff thing has definitely caused some anxiety in the markets for sure. So
I think it's all going to be, everybody's waiting for April 2nd now, aren't they? That's the date now. So I guess that's going to decide a lot of things like this.
Crypto moving a little bit higher again, just chopping in that range though. Crypto just this chop, right? Again, it looks like it's actually found its bottom there. So anybody that's a bottom fisher looking for that next leg up, that maybe if you look at that chart, if you're a chartist, you can look at it and say, okay, that looks like it's forming a little bit of a base there that it wants to kind of jump from. Nothing ever goes straight up, remember that? Here's the Canadian dollar. Again, it's just still looking for direction, right? It's looking for an election, right? That's what the Canadian dollar is looking for, an election.
Yeah.
Anyway, and our AI and tech, we got a little bit of stuff here for Kamloops to benefit. Our sister city here, Kamloops, to benefit as TELUS and NVIDIA announced plans for develop a sovereign AI factory. That's pretty cool here, right here in our own backyard. TELUS and U.S. artificial intelligence tech heavyweight NVIDIA announced plans to build what they call a sovereign AI factory in eastern Quebec. So there you go.
You can't leave Quebec out, can you? Got to get them in.
Quebec's got to get it all,
very
right?
Cool to see Kamloops.
Yeah. But it plans to expand at its Kamloops, BC facility too once initial capacity is exhausted, right? So Kamloops will see some of that, I guess. There you go. There you go. And then Mark Carney has said that Canada has agreed to purchase a $6.5 billion Janadli over-the-horizon radar from the Australians to strengthen its Arctic security. This is the largest defense export in Australian history. Look at the Australians go, eh? Not sure why they would.
They're doing well.
I think the Americans with their NORAD system there probably are. We'll let them fight that out. Here you go. Instagram test AI-generated comments. So there'll be the robots. There's AI influencers out there now, so the robots will actually just start commenting with each other, and you'll just be part of the flow. You won't it'll just be robots dominating a lot of the social platforms in the next little while. And
It already feels like that's the case, to
You'll
be
just
honest.
you'll just spend your time immersed in it, just sucking up the daylight, right? And just like wondering what happened to life as you watch robots talk to each other.
I really, I really must insist that I feel like that's already the case. Like, especially when I'm on X, and you just see the kind of like it doesn't make sense. The sort of
Or
things that people say. It's
you
like
can
that has to be a robot.
you can waste your day on Instagram and on TikTok on these reels generated by robots, or you can log on every morning at 9 a.m. or you can watch this after it's recorded, and listen to two real humans, Jim and Ian here, and we'll tell you what's going on everywhere.
But how do we know that you're real?
Well, nobody would make something that looks like me if you could make something if you could make something better. How's that?
But it is a very interesting point what you make there about like that this is going to increasingly come to dominate a lot of the internet.
Wow.
And I do wonder if it's the case that you can create AI video that is completely impossible to tell whether it's a real person doing like a selfie video or something where they, like something from TikTok where they do some sort of prank or something like that. If it's impossible to tell between that being artificial and real, I wonder if people will then en masse actually move away from apps and phones and things, because then the only way that you can know that you're actually in reality is to go outside and sort of speak to people.
Well, I don't know. I think some people are just going to get mesmerized and stuck in it. Like, look at some people that I even know that spend hours and hours and hours on Instagram and just flicking and on like TikTok and just burning daylight, right? Just like you can't get that back, right? You can't get that time back. Again, if you want to have real conversation every morning, and then we actually interact, most news organizations don't do that. I mean, you can tell me another one that actually interacts with people as we're moving along here. This is kind of the difference between Kelowna Now and many of the other outlets, and we're real. Ian may not be real, but and we don't put Ian's face up because I don't want to. It's like the moon next to the sun. So there you go. So we keep the sun hidden.
Well, maybe one day we'll figure that out. Yeah.
Right.
But I wonder as well, you say, that AI wouldn't create, wouldn't be capable of creating such an interesting person as yourself. I'm sure they also wouldn't be able to create such a weirdo as me. So that's the proof, isn't it? We're oddballs, and that proves that we're real.
A couple of oddballs that are actually, you know what, we're not kind of like sugarcoating stuff. We don't have an agenda. We get no funding from the government, so nobody's telling us what to put up and what not to put up. So there you go. And we try to leave you with something that you can actually learn. Actually, take something with you. Like even that's why we have an AI and tech section, an EV section, and a market section, and all that kind of stuff. But DeepMind CEO expects AGI in 5 to 10 years. So that AGI means that's going to be smarter than you and I put together.
Yeah, I mean that's people refer to that sometimes as being kind of like a singularity moment, don't they? I think did Pete Diamandis say that as well when he was in Kelowna, or when he was, when he spoke at the conference.
Yeah, Peter
in Kelowna.
Diamandis, singularity. That's what I think he runs that Singularity University too.
So that means, in other words, that they'll be so smart that they can create things that we couldn't even create, and then it's like it just kind of keeps growing and growing and growing at a really fast rate.
Kelowna Now was the sponsor of the AI Summit held here in Kelowna in 2024 September, and we are sponsoring another event here in September of 2025. And Peter Diamandis, one of the top AI guys in the world, one of the top 50 entrepreneurs of the world, spoke at that event, and a really sharp guy.
Yeah, very interesting, wasn't it? It was actually, I would say the best thing about that is that he was such an optimist, and he sort of presented a vision of the future that actually could make you happy, because it was like lots of jobs being done by robots and things like that, more time to spend on your own things in your own life.
Yeah. So let's move on to our EV section here as we wrap things up in our EV section. Here's our friend Tim Walz. We asked him to come on the show along when he was running for the election, but Tim Walz definitely trying to make Jagmeet Singh look smart here. Here's Tim Walz here we'll have a little clip here from Tim.
Saying on my phone, I don't know, some of you know this on the iPhone, they've got that little stock app. I added Tesla to it to give me a little boost during the day. 225 and dropping. So, and if you own one, we're not blaming you. You can take dental floss and pull the Tesla thing off, and take out, just telling you.
Well, sad day for Tim Walz today if he looks at his app, because Tesla's up $10 today. So Tim was probably crying. He's the king of the gaff, that guy. Like when he ran, like that, he tried to stick weird onto JD Vance, and like, oh my God, did it ever stick on him?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was projection, wasn't it? Or an attempt to get in there early. But I mean, he was quite a bad VP pick, I think. The Democrats have done that a few times in recent years, actually. They seem to not know how to do it anymore. They keep messing up.
Tesla's getting a lot of hate out there. So here's a young lady defending Tesla here. So we're going to play this clip since we played Tim Walz and his rant there. Let's play this lady in her rant.
A giant target on your back. Not because of the car itself, not because of something I did, but because a bunch of deranged leftists think Elon is a Nazi. So now I get to mentally prepare myself every time I park for some activist with the IQ of a fucking cinder block to key my car. Like, imagine being so fucking brainwashed you think vandalizing some random person's property is activism. Teslas are literally the safest cars on the road. They're made in America. They're pushing tech forward. They're reducing reliance on foreign oil. But no, let's go ahead and destroy them because Elon lets people say mean things on the internet, and he one time did a weird hand gesture. Like, it's so fucking stupid. This is what the left does. They don't build, they don't innovate, they just destroy. They make life worse for everyone.
There you go. I didn't realize that she dropped the bomb quite a few times there.
Yeah, she's pretty foul-mouthed lady there, isn't she? We obviously wouldn't ever say such words.
Yeah.
But it is a funny, very, very weird situation, isn't it? I mean, just to go back to Tim Walz, because he actually matters, unlike this random woman. But like, he's the governor of Minnesota. How many people in Minnesota have shares in Tesla? I wonder. It's just such a tone-deaf thing to do. These are people who are losing money. Not to mention that it's an American company that, brings in a certain amount of money to the United States and people's jobs are on the line. Why would you celebrate the sort of death or, the suffering of an American company? It's such a peculiar thing to do.
The liberals and the Democrats definitely don't make logic make sense a lot of the times. And then even the Vancouver, I was slated to go to this. The Vancouver International Auto Show removes Tesla. They said after they gave Tesla several opportunities to remove themselves, and they said they removed them for safety of workers, attendees, and exhibitors. So they basically booted Tesla out of the show.
Yeah, that's I mean, it makes more sense from the Canadian perspective, I think, to be anti-Elon, anti-Tesla, whatever. So that at least there's some kind of justification for that. But it is also very sad. It's very sad that we've gone through decades and decades in our recent history of trying to like bring people together. And I'm thinking of things like the Olympics, for example, where countries that, maybe we don't like, regimes we don't like, but they still come to the Olympics and we try and we try and sort of speak to each other through sport or whatever. And then the UN and the whole idea of the UN. And like, it's like, on the one hand, we've got that. And then here we are just boycotting a company. And it's like, it's hard to wrap your head around it. And I mean, boycotting the company as in, specifically here, telling them not to come to the show.
Aren't the liberals and the Democrats supposed to be the party of tolerance, of democracy? Like, they've gone a long ways away from that. So I let them know, because I was slated to go. I have media credentials to go to the show, and I will not be attending.
Yeah, well, it's a shame. And I think you're probably not the only one. But I would also imagine on the other side that they received a lot of emails from people saying, look, I'm not going to go if Tesla's there. So it was, as usual with these like organizations or whatever, usually they don't really have a view one way or the other. They just kind of react to what the people tell them.
They said it's not political, but it's obviously political because they made a choice, and that choice was to listen to the voices on the political side.
Absolutely, it is political. It's just like slightly indirect that they could argue.
You can say it's not political, but it's obviously a political decision. So there you go.
100%. Yeah.
And then a lot of people, a lot of news out there saying Tesla is, dying now because of that. And then here's some stuff that, and Tesla, because they did ramp down their line, that's it, the new Model Y is launching. So the new Tesla Model Y now starting to come out in Canada, the US, and all over the world, actually. They did all the lines at once, which really hurt their sales for a bit because, they pulled down the line. The number one selling car in the world, when you pull down that line, obviously it's going to affect sales. But it's up now, and they're dominating sales in China last week. So there you go, demand off the charts.
And that is the most competitive EV market in the world, isn't it? So that's kind of quite impressive that they're doing that.
There you go. And then our memes. These are our memes. This is where we get to have a little bit of fun. Hopefully you enjoy the memes. We put it at the end here so that we can give you something to kind of like look forward to at the end here. Here's the first one. The federal judge orders the price of eggs to go back up.
They're having a lot of fun with this judicial overreach thing, aren't they?
Like there's no way the egg should be going down. Let's get cracking. That's the name of our show today, I think. Let's get cracking. And there you go. And then the CIA files were revealed on JFK. It's been revealed that he was actually killed in those documents that were released, 80,000 pages actually, that he was killed by seed oils.
RFK Jr. would be delighted to hear that.
And then we were going to play this clip, but I'm not going to play this clip. You can go find this clip, because people are still sifting through it. But I think what was in this clip was really that there's really not a lot news come out, but a lot of the stuff that's been talked about has actually been proven to be right.
Well, yeah, we'll have to wait and see, I guess, won't we? I mean, what you said yesterday seems to have been already vindicated, that the CIA went on the ball when he was in Cuba or somewhere like that, or Mexico, wasn't it?
Yeah. So again, we'll instead of like us try to guess, we'll just wait for more of this. Like we'll let AI pour through it and see what they come up with. And then this is the one that's on a lot of people's minds as AI becomes bigger and bigger. Who is the Antichrist?
Number one, straight away, I agree. We don't need to investigate further. It's number one now. It's Blippi.
Blippi, yeah. My granddaughter likes watching Blippi, and my daughter is not a fan of the Blippi. But I mean, Oprah Winfrey, Kathleen Kennedy, the guy with the leaf blower. I don't know.
That's quite a funny one. 2 houses down.
Dora the Explorer, Dane Cook. I
must say, I don't hate Dora anywhere near as much as I hate Blippi. I have to be
honest.
A
lot of the kids love it though. It seems like, and the parents not so much, right?
Yeah, I mean, even worse than Blippi is Coco Melon, but that's can't be the Antichrist because it's just a cartoon. So
a lot of the people used to say Bill Gates was the Antichrist. I don't know if you remember back in the old Excel days. Have you ever seen the Easter eggs inside of Excel?
The 9/11 one. Do you mean?
Oh no, there's other ones. There was one where this is back in probably my early days as an accountant. When it first came out, you would do this thing, and then this guy would come out there, and he would go to this wall of kind of like hell or whatever, and break down this wall. It was a little man, and they said that was Bill Gates opening the gates of hell.
Ah, I can't remember that one. I can just remember the 2 towers and the plane that you could.
You were probably too young. You probably weren't even born when I was doing that.
Yeah, maybe, but I don't know. Bill Gates, how old is he? He doesn't seem that old, but I guess maybe he is quite an age.
He's older than me.
Right, he's 69 apparently. I've just looked at it. Well, there you go. So he's been around a while.
He's hiding under his desk because we're still waiting for that other list to come out.
Yeah, that's just kind of not on the agenda anymore, is it? Nobody's talking about that.
Supposedly Pam Bondi has the new documents because they fired a bunch of people that were holding back those documents. So we'll see.
Yeah, I wouldn't hold your breath if you're out there waiting for it.
And then Jagmeet Singh, again, the warning to you, don't go to the United States. They're waiting for you.
Well, that's actually, there's actually some truth to that, isn't there? Because
there is.
The Indians are very unhappy about Jagmeet Singh, and I wonder if they have a certain amount of influence. I don't know.
The head of the FBI, Kash Patel, has said that if he ends up in the United States, he'll be extradited to India.
Yeah, well, That must really suck on like just on a personal level. I know it's fashionable to like never want to go to the US ever again, but at some point in your life, as a Canadian, you got to go to the US, haven't you? So that must kind of suck for him.
Anyway, that's our news for. Oh no, Rama wants something here. We're doing something. If you could like and subscribe to our newsletter, that'd be great. KelownaNow.com. Also, follow us and like and subscribe on YouTube. And we're on TikTok. We're on X. We'd love you to like and subscribe. We're having a little technical difficulty back there with our extra. That's what it looks like. We're ready to go. We're ready to close it off here. Any final shots there, Ian?
I don't think I do have any. I mean, I'm going to be interested in the fallout from this latest Donald Trump intervention. I want to see how the Liberals are going to react to it because I haven't really reacted yet.
All right. We do thank you for watching Kelowna Now.
We don't just report the news. We live here too. We're your neighbors, bringing you stories that matter to all of us. No government funding, no outside influence. Kelowna Now, local, independent.